Aging is not what we once thought. For much of human history, aging was seen as an unstoppable, linear decline, a simple matter of time, wearing the body down. But in the last 2 decades, science has dramatically reshaped our understanding of what aging truly is. And more importantly, what's possible in 2013. A landmark paper in Cell titled "The Hallmarks of Aging" outlined that aging is not simply a clock ticking forward, but a process driven by specific, measurable biological mechanisms. Things like cellular senescence, mitochondrial dysfunction, telomere attrition, and deregulated nutrient sensing. In other words, aging is governed by systems that we can now study, influence, and in some cases slow down or even reverse. What's even more fascinating is many of these mechanisms don't just determine how long we live, they dictate how well we live. Our energy levels, cognitive sharpness, emotional resilience, muscle strength, and even our relationships are all deeply intertwined with how our biology ages. And that's where this conversation becomes urgent, because we're not simply talking about living longer, we're talking about living better. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how some people in their 60s or 70s seem mentally sharp, physically strong, and emotionally vibrant, while others struggle with fatigue, foggy thinking, and frailty? The difference is rarely just genetics. The difference is often habits, daily behaviors that influence those biological mechanisms of aging. And that's incredibly empowering because it means we have far more control than we once believed. Today, I want to walk you through 5 science-backed strategies to help you slow aging and potentially reverse certain aspects of it. These aren't magic pills or overhyped supplements. They're grounded in rigorous neuroscience, physiology, and behavioral science. And best of all, they're actionable. We'll explore the single nutrient pathway that mimics the effects of fasting, how controlling light exposure can reset your cellular clocks, the surprising role of strength training in mitochondrial rejuvenation, how psychological stress accelerates cellular aging and how to reverse it, the crucial balance between sleep architecture and brain rejuvenation, and the often overlooked power of social connection on inflammatory markers. Each of these is a doorway into the deeper science of how your brain and body age. My goal is to give you tools you can begin using today, protocols and behaviors that align with how your nervous system, metabolism, and cells actually function. So let's get started, because the earlier we act, the more of our biological youth we can preserve and perhaps even reclaim. Activate the longevity switch, mTOR, and nutrient sensing pathways. When most people think about slowing aging, they immediately think of vitamins, creams, or perhaps advanced medical treatments. But one of the most powerful regulators of aging is something happening at the level of your cells, specifically in how your body senses nutrients. At the center of this system is a pathway called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamine. Understanding how mTOR works is like having a master key to influence cellular aging. Here's what the research shows. mTOR is a protein complex that plays a critical role in regulating cell growth, protein synthesis, and metabolism. When mTOR is highly active, cells focus on growth, replication, and building new tissue that's useful during periods of growth or injury repair. However, when mTOR is constantly active, as it often is in modern life, with constant eating, high-calorie diets, and frequent snacking, the result is accelerated cellular aging, increased inflammation, and impaired cellular cleanup processes. Why? Because your cells operate on a trade-off, either build new structures or clean up damaged ones. The cleanup process is known as autophagy, a kind of cellular housekeeping, where damaged proteins and organelles are broken down, and recycled autophagy is strongly activated when mTOR is suppressed, most notably during periods of fasting or caloric restriction. One of the most striking human studies was published in Cell Metabolism in 2019, showing that intermittent fasting protocols, even time-restricted eating, where all meals occur within an 8 to 10 hour window, can significantly enhance metabolic health markers, reduce inflammation, and improve autophagy gene expression, these are the mechanisms that directly intersect with aging itself. To visualize this, think of your body like a city. mTOR is the construction crew building new structures. Autophagy is the sanitation department cleaning up waste. You need both, but if the construction crew works nonstop without cleanup, the city becomes cluttered, inefficient, and ultimately unsustainable. Aging in many ways is the accumulation of this cellular debris. A simple tool to apply is timer-restricted eating. By narrowing your eating window, for example, consuming all meals between 10 a.m. and 6 o'clock p.m., you allow longer fasting periods overnight that activate autophagy and suppress chronic mTOR activation. This doesn't mean starvation or nutrient deficiency. It's about aligning your eating patterns with your body's evolutionary rhythms. For some individuals, occasional longer fasts, such as 24-hour fasts once or twice per month, may provide even deeper autophagy stimulation. However, always consult with a healthcare professional before adopting extended fasting protocols, especially if you have medical conditions. Interestingly, certain compounds can also influence mTOR directly. Rapamycin, originally developed as an immunosuppressant, has been shown in animal studies to extend lifespan by inhibiting mTOR, while its use in humans for longevity is still under investigation. It underscores how central mTOR is to the aging process. But the exciting part is this: you don't need pharmaceutical interventions to start influencing this pathway. Strategic eating windows, balanced protein intake, not excessive, and periods of caloric modulation can all help regulate mTOR naturally. You might be wondering, won't suppressing mTOR reduce my muscle mass? That's a great question. The key is balance. During periods of feeding and strength training, which we'll discuss next, mTOR activation is beneficial for muscle growth and repair, but allowing periods where mTOR is downregulated gives your cells time to clean house. If this insight is helping you, consider subscribing, because the more we understand these molecular levers, the more power we have to shape our aging trajectory. Next, we'll look at another critical factor that influences not just aging, but every cell in your body, your internal clock, and how light controls your biological time. Have you ever noticed how a long international flight, or even just a late night staring at screens, can leave you feeling drained, mentally, foggy, and out of sync the next day? That's your circadian system being disrupted. And the truth is, every single cell in your body, from your brain neurons to your liver cells, operates on an internal clock that powerfully influences aging. Here's what the research shows. At the core of your body's timekeeping system is the suprasysmatic nucleus, SEN, a small group of about 20,000 neurons located in your hypothalamus. The SEN receives direct input from light-sensitive cells in your retina. This input calibrates your entire circadian rhythm, governing hormone release, metabolism, temperature regulation, and even gene expression. When your circadian system is aligned, meaning your internal clock is synchronized with external light-dark cycles, your body functions efficiently. Melatonin is released at night, cortisol peaks appropriately in the morning, and key cellular repair processes activate during sleep. But when this system becomes misaligned through artificial light exposure at night, irregular sleep schedules, or shift work, the consequences extend deep into your biology. A 2017 study in Cell showed that chronic circadian disruption in mice led to accelerated aging markers, including mitochondrial dysfunction, increased oxidative stress, and cognitive impairment in humans. Similar disruptions have been linked to higher risks of cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, depression, and neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's. Here's why. Many of your body's essential repair processes are timed dependent. For example, DNA repair enzymes like PARP1 are regulated by circadian cues. When these cues are mistimed, your cells may miss critical windows for repairing daily molecular damage, leading to an accumulation of cellular wear and tear that fuels aging. So how do we apply this science practically? A simple tool to apply is morning light exposure within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Go outside and expose your eyes to natural sunlight for 5 to 15 minutes. This robustly signals your SCN that the day has begun, anchors your circadian rhythm, and sets off a cascade of hormonal and neural events that stabilize mood, enhance focus, and regulate metabolism. Conversely, in the evening, minimize bright light exposure, especially blue light from screens, at least 1 to 2 hours before bed. This allows melatonin to rise naturally, facilitating deep restorative sleep. Even brief irregularities can have outsized effects. A 2020 paper in PLOS Biology demonstrated that just a single night of circadian disruption can impair insulin sensitivity and cognitive performance the next day. This underscores how closely our biology is tied to consistent light-dark cycles. You might be wondering, what if I live in a place with limited morning sunlight? In that case, a high-quality 10,000 lux light box can serve as a substitute during the darker months. The key is intensity and timing. Bright light early, dim light late. But beyond light, circadian timing extends to when you eat, exercise, and socialize. Aligning these behaviors earlier in the day, matching your body's natural rhythms, can compound the benefit. This concept is sometimes called chronobiology, and it's becoming one of the most promising frontiers in aging research. The empowering message here is this: your body craves rhythm. By honoring that rhythm daily, you're not just improving sleep, you're stabilizing your hormones, enhancing cellular repair, and literally slowing the ticking of your biological clock. If you find this insight helpful and want to continue building a body of knowledge that serves your long-term health, consider subscribing. These protocols are just the beginning of what neuroscience can teach us about controlling the aging process. Next, we'll explore an often underestimated powerhouse in the fight against aging, your muscles, and how strength training can rejuvenate your mitochondria, extend health span, and preserve vitality. When most people think about aging, they often imagine graying hair or wrinkled skin. But one of the most predictive markers of healthy aging isn't cosmetic. It's your muscle mass and strength. In fact, researchers now refer to skeletal muscle as an endocrine organ, a dynamic, metabolically active tissue that secretes hormones, regulates glucose, and supports whole body health. Here's what the research shows. After the age of 30, most adults lose about 3% to 8% of muscle mass per decade, a process called sarcopenia. By the time we reach our 60S or 70S, this loss accelerates, contributing to frailty, falls, metabolic dysfunction, and reduced quality of life. But here's the empowering truth. Strength training can dramatically slow, in some cases partially reverse, these declines, even in older adults. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JMAM, in 2002 demonstrated that progressive resistance training in individuals aged 60 to 80 led to substantial improvements in muscle strength, functional capacity, and insulin sensitivity. And these aren't just aesthetic benefits. They directly impact longevity. Why? Because skeletal muscle serves as your body's largest reservoir for glucose disposal. When you build and maintain muscle, you improve insulin sensitivity, reduce systemic inflammation, and lower the risk of metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, all factors strongly associated with accelerated aging. But the anti-aging benefits of strength training go even deeper, right down to your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the power plants inside your cells generating ATP, the energy currency of life. As we age, mitochondrial function tends to decline, leading to fatigue, metabolic slowdown, and even cognitive impairment. However, strength training activates a process called mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new, more efficient mitochondria. A 2017 study in Cell Metabolism found that high-intensity resistance training significantly increased mitochondrial function and gene expression related to mitochondrial health. Even in older adults and many participants, the genetic profile of their mitochondria began to resemble that of much younger individuals after just 12 weeks of training. To put this simply, lifting weights doesn't just make your muscles stronger. It rejuvenates the very engines that power your cells. So how can you apply this? A simple tool to apply is to engage in strength training at least 2 to 3 times per week, focusing on compound movements that recruit multiple muscle groups, exercises like squats, deadlifts, rows, and presses. You don't need to lift heavy like a bodybuilder. The key is progressive overload, gradually increasing resistance as your strength improves. Even resistance bands, body weight exercises, or light dumbbells can be highly effective, especially for those just starting or dealing with joint concerns. The nervous system adapts rapidly to resistance training, enhancing not only muscle function, but also balance, coordination, and even cognitive sharpness through improved neural efficiency. You might ask, is it too late to start if I'm already in my 60s or 70s? The science says absolutely not. A study published in Age and Aging in 2019 showed that older adults who began strength training saw substantial gains in strength, functional mobility, and independence, often within just a few months. In fact, strength training might be one of the single most powerful interventions available to slow aging at virtually any stage of life. The empowering takeaway here is this: your muscles aren't simply a reflection of youth. Every rep you complete is a signal to your cells to stay metabolically young, hormonally balanced, and neurologically sharp. Next, we'll shift into another powerful and often overlooked factor in the biology of aging, your psychological state. Specifically, how chronic stress accelerates cellular aging, and how mastering your stress response can quite literally slow the shortening of your cellular clock. Let's turn our attention inward to the mind's influence on aging at the cellular level. You've likely heard that stress ages you, but few people realize just how literal that statement is. Chronic psychological stress doesn't just affect your mood or sleep. It physically alters your DNA through structures known as telomeres. Here's what the research shows. Telomeres are protective caps at the ends of your chromosomes, much like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, its telomeres shorten slightly over time. As telomeres become critically short, the cell enters senescence, a non-functional pro-inflammatory state that contributes to aging, tissue dysfunction, and chronic disease. In 2004, a groundbreaking study published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by Dar Alyssa Eppel and Dror Elizabeth Blackburn, who later won a Nobel Prize for her work on telomeres, showed that women under chronic psychological stress had significantly shorter telomeres than those under less stress. The estimated difference in biological aging was nearly a full decade. What's happening in your brain when this occurs is fascinating. Chronic stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, releasing cortisol. Your primary stress hormone. While short bursts of cortisol can be adaptive, prolonged elevation leads to oxidative stress, inflammation, and impaired telomeres activity, the enzyme responsible for replenishing and repairing telomeres. But here's the empowering news. Telomere shortening is not an entirely fixed process. Several interventions have been shown to preserve and even lengthen telomeres over time. A simple tool to apply is regular mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. In a 2013 randomized control trial published in breast cancer survivors who practiced mindfulness meditation experienced maintenance and, in some cases, lengthening of their telomeres compared to control groups. Other studies have demonstrated that practices such as diaphragmatic breathing, gratitude journaling, and cognitive reframing can reduce cortisol levels, lower systemic inflammation, and stabilize telomere length. To make this practical, dedicate 10 to 15 minutes daily to mindfulness or focused breathing exercises. Use simple protocols like box breathing, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Incorporate short reflection sessions where you actively reframe stressful experiences as challenges rather than threats, a technique shown to shift prefrontal limbic brain activation patterns and reduce physiological stress responses. You may wonder, can something as simple as breathing really slow aging? The answer, based on neuroscience and psychoneuroimmunology, is yes, because your perception of stress powerfully influences your physiology. In fact, one study published in Health Psychology in 2012 found that individuals with a higher sense of purpose, a psychological buffer against stress, had significantly longer telomeres, independent of chronological age. This is where psychology meets biology. Your mindset, coping strategies, and emotional regulation are not abstract, they're molecular. They determine how your body ages from the inside out. If this resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe. These kinds of science-backed tools can empower not only your physical longevity, but your psychological well-being, which in turn feeds directly into cellular health. Next, we'll explore a deeply restorative system that most people neglect, but that holds enormous potential for preserving brain function and extending youthfulness: deep sleep and glymphatic clearance. When we talk about aging, people often think of nutrition, exercise, or even genetics, but one of the most powerful and most overlooked levers we have to slow aging is something profoundly simple: high-quality sleep. Sleep is not passive rest, it's active biological repair. And its connection to aging is becoming clearer with every new scientific discovery. Here's what the research shows. During deep, slow-wave sleep, particularly stages 3 and 4 of non-REM sleep, the brain activates a remarkable system known as the glymphatic system. This system, only fully discovered in the past decade, functions as a kind of nighttime sanitation crew, flushing out metabolic waste products, damaged proteins, and toxins that accumulate during wakefulness. One of the most concerning of these waste products is beta amyloid, the protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. When it accumulates in the brain, a 2013 study published in Science showed that during deep sleep, the glymphatic system increases its activity dramatically, clearing beta amyloid at a much higher rate compared to wakefulness. What's happening in your brain when this occurs is extraordinary. Your brain cells actually shrink slightly during sleep, expanding the space between them to allow cerebral spinal fluid to flow more freely and remove waste products. It's an active, essential detox process, but the implications go far beyond Alzheimer's prevention. Chronic sleep disruption has been linked to accelerated cellular aging, impaired DNA repair, shortened telomeres, dysfunction, and increased systemic inflammation, all core mechanisms of biological aging. So how can we harness sleep as an anti-aging tool? A simple tool to apply is to prioritize sleep, regularity, and depth. Research consistently shows that going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, even on weekends, helps stabilize your circadian rhythm, enhancing the depth and efficiency of slow-wave sleep. Temperature also plays a critical role. Your core body temperature needs to drop by about 1 to 2 DGF for optimal deep sleep, keeping your bedroom cool, ideally around 65. DGF 18 DGC can facilitate this natural drop. In addition, avoid caffeine after 2 p.m., even if you fall asleep. Caffeine's half-life can impair slow-wave sleep quality. Limit alcohol as well. While it may induce sleepiness, alcohol disrupts REM and deep sleep cycles later in the night. You may be wondering, what if my mind races at night? This is common. Engaging in a wind-down routine can train your brain for sleep. Simple practices such as dimming lights an hour before bed, reading physical books, practicing gratitude journaling, or using brief guided relaxation can shift your nervous system into parasympathetic dominance. Signaling safety and readiness for sleep. Emerging research also points to the role of sleep consistency over total hours. A 2020 study published in NPJ Digital Medicine found that irregular sleep patterns, even if total sleep time is adequate, correlate with higher biological aging markers. In short, the more stable and restorative your sleep, the more effectively your body clears cellular waste, repairs DNA, maintains mitochondrial health, and regulates hormones like growth hormone and melatonin, all of which directly impact how you age. The empowering message here is simple. Every good night's sleep is an investment into your brain's longevity. It's one of the few daily behaviors that combines cognitive protection, emotional regulation, and cellular rejuvenation into a single natural process. Next, we'll explore a final and often underestimated factor that powerfully influences your aging process: human connection, and how your relationships directly modulate inflammation, immune function, and longevity itself. When people talk about anti-aging, they often focus on food, exercise, or supplements. But one of the most powerful and perhaps surprising influences on how long and well you live is the quality of your relationships. Here's what the research shows. Loneliness and social isolation are not just emotional experiences. They are physiological stressors. In fact, studies have found that chronic loneliness is as harmful to longevity as smoking 15 cigarettes a day in one of the most robust studies ever conducted on human aging. The Harvard study of adult development, which tracked participants for over 80 years, researchers found that the strongest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity was not cholesterol levels, income, or even genetics. It was the quality of close relationships. Those who reported feeling more connected and supported had less cognitive decline, fewer chronic illnesses, and lived significantly longer. What's happening in your body when this occurs is profound. Chronic loneliness activates the same neural circuits involved in physical pain. It upregulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, increases cortisol, and shifts the immune system into a pro-inflammatory state in evolutionary terms. Social disconnection signaled danger. Separation from the group meant greater vulnerability. The